So I'm going to try and explain this now. This is long overdue coming out, and to be honest with you, this is about my 15th time trying to record this because I keep kind of like stumbling over my words. The story is so insane. I kind of find it hard even explaining this stuff. It's that difficult. I'm not sure if you can hear this kind of moaning up over me, banging stones and like scraping furniture, trying to like. He's one of your local kind of like Sinn Féin cronies, being honest with you, trying to cover up their actions. I suppose I better start with what it's like currently, right? My ex, her and this kind of psychologist in Tulsa spread all this kind of stuff in an effort to try and like hide their own actions. And I'm going to like start at the beginning and explain all this. But I suppose I should talk about presently now. In 2022, there in November, she appeared on the Two Norries. It's a Cork podcast. And she basically implied she was in an abusive relationship, and that I won't stop taking drugs, and that she was drug free since she's from 2008, and the D8s mean something to her, like, and kind of this. I know that sounds like kind of mediocre, but this is something that my mother used to say, that the D8s meant something to her. Like, we lived in 28, we moved to 28, they were married in 28, my father's birthday was 28, my birthday was the 28, I got out of Ashreese on my arm at 28, at the 808. So she used my story. This woman, like, I can't explain. There's nothing off limits to this woman, and I'm gonna have to explain it. The week my mother passed away, she sent me down a photograph of her mother. Do you know what I mean? There's all this sexual stuff spread around about me. And in court then, every time she's questioned her, she'd cry and say, no, he's a great father and all this kind of stuff. He's a good person, but it's all in his head. He cracked up after his father died. And in the middle of all this, she sent me down a letter that basically said, due to your unthinkable actions towards the kids. So, like, you can put two and two together and, like, employ. And when the judge questioned her, and she said, oh, no, she didn't mean that. She meant that they had to move house. But this is the kind of, like, narcissistic kind of liar. This woman needs to be called out once and for all. And what she said on the podcast in 2022, like, basically implying that I'm this, that and every other thing. And then with everything that's going around socially, kind of like, they're all quick to believe it, if I'm being honest with you. And I just want to read, this is a message from the 4th of January 2017. And this is from her to me. I just want to read it. I'm going to leave out the kids' names, okay? Why would I be messing you around? I don't want to be in and out of court for the next few years and still getting nowhere. It's the girls that miss out. We both have had time to settle down after all that happened. You're a good man, John. You always were, and a good father. The kids love you, especially blank. She never even wants to speak to blank, but loves it when she speaks to you on the phone. She never makes excuses when it's time to talk to you. They are both looking forward to spending more time with you. Whatever happened after your dad passed happened. Let's just move forward positively and sort things out. So, like, that contradicts everything that she had to say in that podcast about me. Do you know what I mean? So she's either lying on the podcast or she's lying here. Either way, it shows the character of this person. This person is an unbelievable liar, if I'm being honest, and like, nothing is off limits. My mother went through hell before she died. And it had a lot to do with kind of like certain people. I'll just put it that way. And I'm going to call out this kind of woman. I think any mother that weaponizes her kids in the fashion that she does and did should be called out. And to be honest with you, I reared both those kids for years, and people out in Tranmore know that I had both them kids. And when I did go into court, because I did bring her to court, I was awarded the kids eventually after going through hell at the hands of this woman. And I'm not joking with you, and I'm going to talk about all this, but I was eventually awarded the kids, being honest with you. And she just broke the court orders and laughed at me outside the court. And that's the real character of this person, do you know what I mean? Like, she was like going around spreading all this sexual stuff around me, do you know what I mean? And then I was supposed to walk the streets with the two girls, so obviously, to be honest with you, I kind of didn't, because I didn't want to have that kind of stuff brought to the kids. But like, it's high time this woman was called out. She sent safety orders to me in-laws just before my wedding to try and cause trouble. She dropped the kids down before my wedding to get their wedding dresses because they were going to be the bridesmaid. As soon as I bought the dresses, she pulled the kids out with the wedding, saying that they can go only if she can go. Like, that's the character of this person. This is all factual, and it's all backed up by messages and documentation. And whereas the And whereas the two Norries could send me a kind of an apology over, or kind of, not sure if you can see that, they could send me an apology over her kind of stuff that she said online. Do you know what I mean? Like, nobody's seen that apology. Everybody got to hear like the shit basically that she was saying. Do you know what I mean? Her like saying that she was drug free from 2008. Like, this is all lies. We both went back taking drugs late 2009, and this went on for kind of many years, being honest with you. And we were getting the drugs originally in Waterford, and I'm not going to lie, and I'm not going to make myself kind of look like I'm the victim or any kind of stuff, like, because I was also involved in it. And she was getting the drugs then cheaper in Dublin, so it was cheaper for us to get them in Dublin. And until they started ringing me because she was sneaking down heroin, like, and kind of like, she ran up a huge bill, and that's how I found out that she owed money for heroin basically. And this was in 2011. That was, so her kind of the stuff that she's saying on the podcast, saying that she's clean from 2008, like, it's just more lies from a lawyer. And it's time that somebody called this woman now, and I'm going to do it there now. I'm just kind of find it hard explaining this because it's so kind of convoluted and it's so kind of corrupt, but I'm going to try and explain it. So if I get all kind of muddled up, or if I kind of get hard to understand, kind of like bear with me, because this is probably my 15th or 16th time honestly trying to record this, and I keep kind of tripping over myself, if I'm being honest with you. I just want to read a message. Like, this was about 2 or 3 years ago. I'll just read a message. This was on social media, and it was basically put on it because someone had spread a load of sexual slander about me. You should be ashamed of yourself. Tell the people about you serving 6 years for drugs and 4 years for interfering with your kids. You're a mental patient that should be locked up. So that's the kind of stuff that was going around. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it might be a lot of things. I'm actually a great father. Do you know what I mean? And believe it or not, I was actually a great mother to the kids, better than ever she was. And there's a lot of stuff she thinks I won't talk about. Like, I was addicted kind of like to fucking many things, like porn addiction was one of them. She thinks I won't talk about that kind of, because it is embarrassing. There's a lot of emotional stuff she thinks like I won't talk about. Like, I met her in rehab in 2008, and I want to just kind of like say like it is, and it's not about like it's not about me kind of sugarcoating or kind of creating some kind of image like she has done. She's fabricated this fake image, and it's like, it's sickening, if I'm being honest with you, because it's just so fake. She's hashtagging Ashery in everything, trying to get kind of attention. She didn't even finish her aftercare. Do you know what I mean? None of us did. We both left at the same time to go off taking drugs. Do you know what I mean? Like, but she left all of this out on our podcast. Do you know what I mean? She left out how I brought her to court. I started all legal proceedings. I brought her to court, and I went through hell. And eventually the judge had enough of her. If I'm being honest, Johnny awarded me the kids. And she basically just laughed at me outside the court. If I'm being honest with you, she just broke the order and then broke it again. But if that was a man that was after doing what she was after doing, he'd get 10 years in prison, and make no bones about it. And to be a man and have all this kind of sexual stuff kind of like attached to your name, do you know what I mean? And being the father of 2 girls, you could imagine kind of like how kind of like impactful this is, like, not only to my life. I'd be more like kind of concerned about how it might impact the kids' life when they get older, if I'm being honest with you. And there was numerous kind of organisations lured into this by this psychologist friend of her who's been pulling strings for her. She now has this hair program that she's at the beginning in Dublin there now. And I tell you where that came out of. I was going to start a tattooing school, teaching tattooing. I was approved by the Dole. I was getting a kind of grant off the Dole. And with all the sexual slander that was spread, every time she would drop the kids down, 2-3 days after she would go back, there'd be all this sexual slander spread. This happened 3 times. And all the sexual slander would be spread. So basically it destroyed any kind of hope for starting a tattooing school. And after this then, she went off and like, she basically stole the idea that I have and just replaced it with a hairdressing. And now she's moving into tattooing because she has to ruin anything that I have. If I'm being honest, that's the kind of person she is. And to be honest with you, I should have listened to him in Ashery when they warned me that she lacked empathy and that she comes from a different world that I do, and that I was basically too soft for her. And they were right. So I'm going to try and explain this, and like bear with me if I kind of like stumble over my words and stuff, because like it's very difficult and it's emotional, because like there was funerals and stuff around kind of and stuff, and kind of like family members were literally harassing to the grave in an effort for this person to cover up her lies, and this kind of psychologist in Tussle. And I'm going to try and explain this now, and I don't really know where to begin, so I'm going to just try and explain. So I'm just going to begin at the start. But I just want to mention, actually, before I start, I brought her to court, and I'm going to get to all this. But when I turned up in court with I had clean urines, I had a psychiatric evaluation, I had a parenting agreement where I took the kids for 6 days a week. I had all this going into court. Like, she left all of this out on her podcast. Do you know what I mean? Because it gave a true reflection of me as a person. Do you know what I mean? And she walked through that podcast. The two Norries left lie at will. Like, the lack of the oversight that was shown on that podcast, I think, is unbelievable. And as for their like half-arsed apology that kind of nobody sees, like, they can basically stick that up the hole and don't mind saying it. Do you know what I mean? They got their 30 pieces of silver by getting the enterprise grant. Do you know what I mean? The year after. They had her on and they got the enterprise grant the year after. And the year they had her on, she got the enterprise grant because someone was pulling strings. So I'm going to try and explain this. So it's probably going to take a couple of videos, if I'm being honest with you, to explain this. It's that crazy. So I suppose I better just start at the beginning. So I met her in 2008 in rehab. She's from Ballymon, Dublin. I'm from Waterford. We started a relationship in there basically, and she was in there kind of for drug abuse. I was in there kind of for drugs, fucking alcohol, sex, porn, chocolate, gambling. I was in there for everything, to be honest with you. And but her main issue in there was she had no time for other people. Basically, she craved this validation, and she would put it down that she has some kind of mothering issues or whatever kind of. So she craved validation, social validation all the time. So she'd be off kind of doing all this kind of hair, kind of like, and getting the validation. And when we left Ashery, we were both given things not to do when they get out. Basically, I was told not to kind of hang around the same groups and kind of this kind of stuff. And she was told she wanted to cut hair for 2 years. And even though she said on the podcast that wasn't the reason, but that was the reason. She was told not to cut hair for 2 years because it was creating an imbalance in her psyche or something like that. It was creating an imbalance in her personality, that she was craving the social validation above anything else, basically. And that's the real reason why she was told not to cut hair for 2 years, despite what she may say in the podcast. So so we came out of Ashery, and kind of we started a relationship in there. And they warned me in there because they kind of knew we were having a relationship, kind of, and being honest with you. And they warned me, they said, look, she comes from a different world than you comes from, and she's going to run rings around you, and she lacks empathy, and kind of like, this is basically what they told me. And like, sure, I thought I knew better, if I'm being honest with you, and you try and see the good in everyone. So we started a relationship. We had a daughter then, kind of like the following year, 2009, in Tramore, and pretty soon, like, she started cutting hair then. She started then building up her hair clients then. She went back cutting hair, obviously. And it got really out of hand. She would just leave 8:45, and she'd be gone like till 9:30. She'd be gone all day, and kind of like, it was insane. Do you know what I mean? And I got to the stage, and to be honest with you, I learned pretty quick that I didn't really kind of love her, that it was kind of, I was vulnerable, and but then if I tried to break it up with her, she would threaten to take the kids back to Ballymon. So kind of like, I was kind of raining on the kids at this stage, and I was years, like, she was only supposed to do the hair for 6 months, then it was 12 months, then it went on for 2 years and 4 years, and just the way it was. And all that time then I was rearing the kids. Yeah. So it got to the point then, the only thing we had in common is we went back taking drugs in late 2009. We went back taking drugs. We were getting them in Waterford kind of originally. Then in 2010 she said she can get them cheaper in Dublin. So kind of we started kind of getting them there. And I was at the moving out briefly for about 2 weeks, and I had an apartment. But I kept the apartment. I never gave back the apartment because I moved back after about 2 weeks. She got the kids to ring me up and to be honest with you, she didn't have a babysitter for the kids, and I wasn't going to have some stranger sitting with the kids. So kind of I ended up moving back. That's the truth. The only thing we had in common, as I said, was taking drugs and kind of making porn, watching porn. And that's the truth. Really. I can't sugarcoat that. Do you know what I mean? And all these promises of how she was going to cut back and the whole kind of like chasing this validation, because they wanted just to hear like she was in women's groups and her friends said the same thing, that she had to try and take over everything, and it got to us. It was just weird. Do you know what I mean? And then so I moved out a second time because the same thing again, and then the same thing again. She got the kids then crying on the phone to ask me to come back, so I couldn't say no to the kids. I'm being honest with you, and I went back. All these promises and like she was going to change and all this kind of stuff again. And then I was going to move out again a third time. And the second time, I moved out, right? A woman from Ras, it was a Waterford Council thing. She got me an apartment, right? And underneath, there was another apartment. And there was a person living up by the name of Tony Kelly, right? And this little creep now, fucking, like, he gave me more than an awful time out in Tramore. But I just want to say, the reason I got the apartment, that the Catherine O'Brien's the woman's name, she had to tell him that I was only taking the kids 2 days a week. And he basically started complaining that I had the kids every day and kind of couldn't sleep. And so it was all on record that I had the kids that much. This was in 2012, I think. So it shows that I did have the kids even then, because he was complaining non-stop that I had the kids like morning, noon and night, being honest with you. And I'll get to him later on now in the story, being honest with you. But I was going to move out then a third time. And it was the same thing, because I wanted to do something different with my life. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to kind of feel a bit fulfilled. I'm being honest, and it's not a reflection on the kids. I enjoy like being around the kids, but I just needed to kind of like better myself. And it was the usual kind of all these promises don't go and all this kind of stuff. So what I've done is I listened to her kind of bullshit basically, and I ended up like enrolling in a psychology course out in Tramore. So I started the course, and at the course, and the tutor of the course, he actually taught me when I was 16 in Newton, so I haven't seen him in years, right? And it was just small talking to him and he mentioned he was a Bahoy, and I didn't know what it was. I thought he said he was bi, if I'm being honest, so I kind of just let it go over my head. And then I heard him saying to one or two other students, kind of, he would always like angle, it would always be brought back to he was Bahoy, and have you heard of Bahoy? And kind of, it turned out it was a religion, right? It was Bahoy, so I had no interest again. And so I was talking to him then privately, and he's asking me kind of how my relationship was and all this kind of stuff. And I was saying, well, to be honest with you, I'm with a woman, and I'm only kind of with her to keep the kids in Tramore. I don't love her. I don't even like her, if I'm being honest with you. And yeah, basically. And after that conversation, my ex was in this woman's group in Tramore, and the man's wife, she's also a psychologist employed by Waterford Tussle. She came up hanging up these flyers, pretending to be hanging up these flyers, hanging around outside, right? And no one kind of bit, kind of like that time. But she turned up the week later then again. The same thing, hanging up these flyers, and it was for the relationship advice, free play dates for the kids. And at the end of it, then it says spiritual nourishment. So basically, she lured in basically my ex, if I'm being honest with you, into this kind of, because we didn't know it was a religion at the time. Then it turned out it was a religion. But it lured in her, and my ex's friend was actually also in my psychology class. And she got lured into it as well, but her two kids, we used to play with her two kids, and kind of, we were in this kind of, and several other people obviously, and there'd be one or two from the class might come for one, they'd leave, and kind of like, I've heard it brought up several times. And later on, I made complaints about that tutor, about inviting students up to his class. And he said that he wanted that the students inquired about the religion that he was in, and he only answered questions like. So we're to believe that the students inquired about some obscure religion that he and his wife just happened to be recruiting for. Do you know what I mean? So I'll get to that though later. Yeah, so she signed us up as a family, and we went up, and it was in the Clarenwood out in Tramore, and we went up, and as we went in, then there was kind of a circle of people sitting there, and kind of like, and the kids were playing out in the garden. They have all these tropical plants out there, and I nearly died down. The tutor walked in, because I was like, do you know what I mean, talk about a small world, and he was like, oh, like giving it the whole, like, he was shocked as well, but obviously it was all set up, do you know what I mean, like, but I didn't see that at the time, do you know what I mean, like, so. And then his wife came in, and I was like, I know that woman from somewhere, but I couldn't put my finger. And I was looking, I was like, I definitely know that woman from somewhere. She wouldn't look me in the eye. But as time passed, then we ended up in this. Now I know fucking ethically we shouldn't have been up there in that tutor's house, kind of like. Let's be honest about it. Like, it was gross code of ethic breach. And we ended up basically, and as kind of things developed, and they give you these books that you're writing, kind of stage one, and there's all these questions in it, kind of how you feel about this, how you feel about that, and you write it down, and then you hand it back to the wife. She was kind of main kind of person or recruiting for this. Her name was Anne Carey. His name was Pat Carey, and out in Clarenwood. And as I said, if I'm lying or anything, like, it's defamation there now. So by all means, like, start your legal proceedings. And yeah, so like I was feeling a bit uncomfortable. We were writing these kind of stuff in these books, and we were giving it to psychologists who are basically kind of profiling it. You know what I mean? Like, they know your inner thoughts and how you feel about this. And because she was hanging on to all the books, and when you're finished stage one, then you go on to stage two and stage three, and that's the way it goes. And what it does is it slowly lures you into this thing. And I can't really explain this stuff. You could be talking to someone and there'd be someone behind you, like, Anne's the boss, or Anne's the boss, and like this what was done. Like, I knew what it was. It was basically conditioning. I could, like, but my ex was kind of loving it. She was out there like fabricating her past as she does, like, about her sob story, and they were like, "Oh, well done." And what they wanted was me ex's hair clients, because this is what they were saying. They were saying, like, invite them up, don't invite them up now together, invite them up on their own, because they believe in that people on their own can be manipulated easier by a group. And this is the whole kind of like agenda behind these. And I started feeling really uncomfortable about this. And my ex was loving it basically because she was showered with validation and kind of attention. And yeah, we got further and further into this. And this woman, Aunt Carrie, she was in her house morning and night. She would come down in the morning to drop a book or whatever, some kind of crap, basically, and she'd stay there all day spouting this kind of religion kind of stuff and all this. And I had to stop there for a minute, so I'll continue. Yeah, so like we were in this kind of, we got further and further into this kind of religion out in Clarenwood, and I was run by kind of my tutor in the psychology course out in Tranmore, Pat Carey, and it was mainly run by his wife, Anne Carey, who was employed by Waterford Tussle. And as I said, I thought I knew her, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And she kind of showered me ex with so much attention. Now, her friend was in it as well, her best friend, and she was even saying, like, this is all a bit weird, because, like, it was just obviously we were being manipulated, and being honest with you. But, like, if I said that, like, she was threatening to take the kids back to Ballymun, so I was have to kind of like I reared the kids for many years, being honest with you. So I didn't want the kids going back to Ballymun. So I ended up going further and further into this Baha'i religion. And what they don't tell you, like, they have their own laws, they have their own sentences, they ostracize you, you're not allowed to mix outside the Baha'i group, you have to be with other Baha'i people. They don't tell you any of this, like, when you're in it. Like, it's so manipulating. They believe strongly in manipulating people in. They can use sexual slander as a way to kind of, you're not allowed to speak negatively about the Baha'i. If you have any issues, you're not to speak about it. You can bring it to, like, this Aunt Carrie, but you're not to speak openly about it. And they have a system where they have one person behind you. Do you know what I mean? Kind of like you're supposed to be giving them advice, and then there's another person ahead of you, and you're supposed to be getting advice off of them. But realistically, you're all just watching each other, if I'm being honest with you. That's the way it's done. And I had, like, serious issues with this, especially with the whole writing in the books, and kind of like, because the psychologist was, like, taking these books, so they were basically profiling it. And I got to a stage then I was having really kind of like doubts about this, as was my ex's friend, being honest with you. Kind of like there was something kind of just weird about it. And as I said, I thought, she wouldn't look me in the eye, this was going on, like, we were in it, like, for well over a year. And then they announced there was a play date down at Kilkenny College, a day out for the kids. And then we were to go down, so we went down anyway. And when we got down there then, it was announced that I wanted a day out. It was actually kind of a weekend. It shows your loyalty to the religion if you're willing to stay there from the Friday to the Sunday evening. That's what it was. Now myself and the kids are facing and he dropped. So did my ex's friend, but like my ex loved it because like it gave her the chance to shine, and she was being introduced as the next messiah for all the world. And it was clear I wanted to play there. Do you know what I mean? They had like shops there selling merchandise of the new beginning. That's the name of this Bible that they belong to. This, and they were selling the merchandise, and then they had lectures from different people. Like, and I felt there was people in the crowd strategically placed to ask certain questions regarding stuff that you might have issues with, because they were saying that they were basically promoting that they're the best parts of all religion, and I just couldn't get my head around that. Do you know what I mean? Because like you're devoted to one religion. Like you can't have numerous religions. Maybe I'm wrong about this. I don't know, but I found the whole theology behind this very kind of strange. Being honest with you, I mean, very manipulating. The whole kind of the openness that they manipulate, and the further you go in, then like the more little secrets you find out, and it was just weird. And then the kids were supposed to go off making pizza because it's supposed to be a kids' play day out, and they were bored shitless, being honest with you. But they went off, and when they came back, I was like, "How was it making the pizza?" And they told me that they weren't allowed to make the pizza unless they repeated this prayer. They had to chant this prayer repeatedly over and over again. Other than that, they weren't allowed to make the pizza. Now, this is just basic conditioning. You know what I mean? Like, and I seen this for what it was. I wasn't too happy with this, as you could imagine. But my ex, like, as long as she was getting the attention, like nothing really matters to her as long as she's getting the attention. And that's basically essentially what it was. Her friend wasn't happy, I wasn't happy, the kids weren't happy, her friends' kids weren't, no one was happy about this. It was ridiculous. Then we went to leave, and like they said, all the gates are locked, so they're after locking us in. And I was like, what are you locking us in for? They're like, oh, we're not locking you in, we're locking the thieves out. This is the way they look at it, like, do you know what I mean? Because they look down their nose at any addicts or any of this kind of stuff. Like, this is why they're not involved in any kind of charities around Ireland, do you know what I mean? I ended up getting back to the house, and we had a huge argument, myself and my ex, and she was like loving it. And she was doing this, she was converting and all this kind of stuff. And I said, I was leaving it, and the kids wanted to leave. Now, I wanted to take the kids out, but like, she dragged the kids into it, if I'm being honest with you. And I didn't really have a say in it because she was constantly threatening, as I said, kind of like to take the kids back to Ballymun. But she was in this kind of yoke. So what they done then is they started ostracizing me from the kids. They would come down and take the kids off every day. And as I said, they don't mix with people aside the Bahoy kind of. So I wanted to be there because I wanted a Bahoy kind of devotee, or whatever you want to call it. And this is what was going on. And this went on for a couple of months, being honest with you. And eventually then I had enough. And I had an apartment because I was at the moving out once before. The first time I moved out, I got an apartment. I think I moved back after like a week or two at tops. And so I went back there. And now at this time we were still taking drugs and all this. Like, obviously, this people in the Bahoy, they didn't know because my ex didn't want them to know about her kind of like her goings on, and kind of, it was ridiculous. Like, and then I think I was only gone like a couple of days, and kind of like I was the usual. She get the kids to ring because she had no babysitter when she wanted to do her hair, and I wasn't going to have some stray because there was times like I went down and she'd have like literally a stranger minding the kids, and that's no word of like. And I wasn't having that. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to rear the kids myself, and so basically I would go back to mind the kids myself, and because at least I knew kind of who was around the kids. Being honest with you, and one time then we were getting intimate and we were about to have sex, and she said Anne had banned her from having sex with me until I converted to this kind of Baha'i religion. That's no word of lie. And I was like, you really need to go back and just talk to your family about this. I said, I'm moving back out now, but you need to go back and you need to talk to your family and just get their opinion on this. So like, I moved out again. And when I moved out again, then unfortunately my father was kind of sick. We didn't know how sick he was. But he passed away pretty soon after a couple of weeks, kind of is all he lasted. And when I moved out again, then unfortunately my father was kind of sick. We didn't know how sick he was. But he passed away pretty soon after a couple of weeks, kind of is all he lasted. And kind of I was brought back down to the house to be paraded around because my family were obviously calling to the house, and like they didn't know any about any of this religion thing because I don't want to burden them with all this kind of stuff and kind of. So my sister be calling and my ex would be there and she'd be all over me, draped all over me, and like, do you know what I mean? Like, and this kind of stuff, and just there. I can't really explain this kind of stuff. It was just so sickening, kind of to see, if I'm being honest with you. But yeah, I was there. My father passed away, and no, I didn't get on. Like, I didn't speak to this kind of Bowie crowd for like months. I remember actually in 2014. I think they went back in September after, because I was doing a psychology course, and I wouldn't go back in September. I think I only had another couple of weeks to go to get the grade, and I wouldn't go back. And they were saying, if you just come in and sit in the class, we'll give you the grade. You don't have to do that. And I couldn't even be in the room with this person. That's no word. I couldn't even be in the same fucking room as him. Do you know what I mean? When his wife would call, like I'd go upstairs, I detested these people. Like, do you know what I mean? And when my father died, then my ex came to the funeral, obviously, kind of like, but she never brought the kids. And all my family, like, why didn't she bring the kids? And I didn't know what to say, if I'm being honest with you. But she brought this Anne and Pat Carey from this Baha'i religion. She brought the two of these to my father's funeral. Now, none of my family ever met these. They didn't know anything about these whatsoever. And yeah, she never brought the kids. But her friend came, who was in this religion thing, and she had started to see the same things, and she was like, fucking, what the hell are they doing here? Because she knew how I felt about these and how they felt about me, if I'm being honest with you, do you know what I mean? So there was a mutual kind of, and she was like shocked, like, why are they doing, like, what are they doing here? This is what I guess kind of real crazy, right? So as I was saying earlier, I always thought that I knew this woman from somewhere, but I couldn't pinpoint where, right? And at the funeral, there was a person there with another person. I can't really go into details on the people's name because I don't want to say their names, right? And there was allegations, right, of sexual misconduct against the daughter of an employee from Tusla against a juvenile, right? And I was called in as a witness to, I was called in as a kind of support kind of witness for all the world, right, to sit with the juvenile because he's a relative, right? I just put it that way, right? And this was on the grounds of Arkeen Hospital out in Waterford. Right? You go in the entrance and take a left. You don't go into the hospital, you take a left, and there's all these flat buildings, and I was in there. And we were brought out there by a Waterford social worker, James Kennedy. And we were in there, and given the gravity of the situation, I heard the situation, and it was pretty graphic, let's just say that way. There was a girl also in there had reported what she had seen, basically, right? And I know it was them when they were talking about it, because as I said, I was only a witness, support witness, so I wasn't really talking around like that. But I heard then that the dates, this was actually 7 weeks prior, the allegations were made. So I was like, why is it only being like investigated there now? And they were like, oh, there was a staff shortage. That's what it was put down to, right? And they were like, I was, say, sitting here, the person was here, this woman was up the top of the table, kind of, and across from me was James Kennedy, the social worker. So I assumed that the woman was a kind of like a vanguard, given the gravity of the situation, and she had a big file in front of her, and do you know what I mean? And kind of, so that was it. So outside then, I was pretty pissed off that I was 7 weeks old before they were investigating it. The next day, I rang up James Kennedy and I said, what's the Garda's next approach? And he informed me that she wasn't a Garda, she was a Tusla employed psychologist. So you have a Tusla employed psychologist investigating the fucking daughter of another Tusla employee. Do you know what I mean? Not to mention then it was 7 weeks old, so she was never ever going to find any because it would have just highlighted what Tusla failed to do, basically. So she basically covered it all up, and I was told that she decided to keep it internal, that there'd be no girls involved, that she has decided to keep it internal. And the girl who reported what she had seen, they moved her, saying that she was troublesome, and like that's the way that was dealt with. But as I said, at the funeral, I seen two people talking to this Anne Carey at the funeral, and I was reading it, they were there, as you could imagine. And the two people at the funeral, I can't really go into the details, but one of the persons at the funeral was the juvenile that I was sitting with down in the hospital. And I realised then who this Anne Carey was. She was the same person that covered up that situation in Narkeen Hospital all those 10 years beforehand, and I'm not joking with you, my stomach nearly turned. I talk about a fright. But that's what that woman was. So she shouldn't have been anywhere near me family, let alone luring us into some fucking religion. Do you know what I mean? So when we got home then after the funeral then, um, obviously I said to my ex, I said, I'm reporting her, I know exactly who she is, I remember who she is, and I was reporting her. So my ex literally walked out of the house there and then and went up to Iwan's house, because she was only living 5 minutes up the road. She was up there about 4 or 5 hours, being honest with you, obviously up there kind of fucking plotting whatever they wanted to do. But she came back. I think my father was only after been buried like 6-7 hours, and here she was whistling and singing songs on the top of her voice, going around the house, packing her bags, and obviously I wanted kind of too good of a place to bury my father. And she said she was going to Dublin for the chillax with the kids. That's exactly word for word what she said, and she left. And the next day, then my sister called and she was kind of shocked. She's like, "Where is she with the kids?" And I was so embarrassed, and I had to tell her that she had hair to do for the wedding. Yeah, so that's what that Aunt Carrie was, and she roped us into this Baha'i religion. And I'm probably just going to leave it there for now, because I know this kind of gets crazy, and it does get crazy, because they don't, after this, the shit hit the fan. You think about what I'm just after saying, that how serious this is, and they tried to cover all this up. Now, there was no sexual stuff ever said about me, do you know what I mean? This only ever came about after this incident, all this sexual stuff, and that's what was done. And then I got into an argument with my ex. Obviously I moved down. When she went up to Dublin for her chillax, I went back to the apartment, being honest with you, and there was a couple of 2 or 3 weeks that we were just swapping nasty texts and all that, and kind of I just had enough of it. Then I just went into court and I just lodged the papers for guardianship, custody, and guardianship, custody, and access. I lodged all papers and I brought her to court. And I'm going to talk about then kind of in the next video of the hell that this woman put me through in court. And despite me being awarded the kids, she broke multiple court orders and just laughed at me. Do you know what I mean? There was even an order made in court where she wouldn't give me back photographs of my father, and the judge made a court order that she was to give him back. And to this day, I haven't got the photographs back. And she broke the court orders where I was to collect both the kids. And even though I'm not the father of the eldest girl, but I was awarded both the kids, and she just laughed at me beside the court. And just before I finished here, I just want to highlight, because I was reporting this and I was telling people to stay away from this Baha'i religion, and kind of all of a sudden then the HSC starts promoting this all of a sudden then the HSC starts promoting this religion. There's a religion there, look. See it? Baha'i. Look, HSC. This is what they were doing then. Our healthcare system shouldn't be kind of thrown their weight behind any religion. They should be unbiased, to be honest with you. But I just want to show that there as well. Look, see, my ex was getting my daughter to draw this star, trying to provoke me is what it was. This was actually on the day of my birthday, 28/7/2021. This is the kind of stuff she was doing. Why would that provoke me if that didn't have anything to do with that? Do you know what I mean? So, and if you want to go on to listen to the lies out of me ex, go on to the Two Norries podcast in November, because I'm going to upload a letter there now actually tomorrow. I'll upload it onto my TikTok, because I want to address the Two Norries, because I want to upload a letter where they basically had this person on and she was allowed to lie from A to B. Do you know what I mean? She's given a platform to lie and fabricate her past, and because they got because I rubbed off on them, it's okay. That's basically it. She jumped the queue and she won the 20,000 Enterprise Award based on some hairdressing program on Dublin, which was basically my idea for tattooing. She just basically stole the idea and put hairdressing in, if I'm being honest with you. And then the year after having her on, the Two Norries, they also won the 20,000 Enterprise. I know I probably haven't explained that very well, but I'll keep going. So thanks if you after listening so far.